are going through the book of Esther. This is week 4, such a time as this. And we've seen already a couple of interesting things about the book of Esther that we also mentioned in our study just on the canon of Scripture and the Word of God, how Esther doesn't mention God in it anywhere, and yet all through Esther you can see God moving, his hidden hand, as Linda Brownback says in her study guide, and other people say as well. You can see God's hand at work all through the book, positioning people and helping things out. And we've looked at how that initially there was a queen who was deposed by her king, and then basically a Jewish lady named Esther won a beauty contest essentially and became the queen, and her uncle who raised her, Mordecai, he foiled an assassination attempt on the king at some point. And then there was a man named Haman who rose to power, and Haman was a descendant of the Amalekites, and of course Esther and Mordecai were Jews, and so there was an enmity there between those people. And so when Haman was raised up to be like basically the second in all the kingdom under the king, there was a decree that everybody's supposed to bow to him and pay homage and stuff. But Mordecai, as a Jew, knowing that Haman was an Amalekite, didn't do that. And I guess this went on for a bit, and finally some people asked Mordecai, or they kept asking Mordecai, why won't you bow? Why won't you do what the king says? And he said, well, because I'm a Jew. And I guess left it to their imagination that Haman was an Amalekite. Maybe he thought it was self-explanatory. But when Haman found out about it, he wasn't content just to do anything to Haman or to Mordecai. He decided he wanted to kill all the Jews everywhere. And so he basically went in and kind of attempted to bribe the king with a large donation to the treasury. But in the end, the king just told him to go ahead and do what he wanted to do, gave him his signet ring. And so a decree was sent out, and there was a whole thing about rolling a die. Does anybody know what that casting lots, what it was called? Name of the lot? From last week? You guys wouldn't know.
Per.
Yeah.
What was
It is per.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, pure, per, something like that. It's pure, like P-U-R.
Oh, that's what you said.
Yeah.
That's what they call it, perm.
Purim, yeah, it's like the plural of it.
That movie Purge.
Oh yeah, the purge. It was in a way they tried to be, but yeah, he rolled a die, and as Proverbs said, you can roll the die, but God determines where it comes up on, and it came up on the very last month of the year, so it gave them 11 months for this notice to go out, and for, as we'll see today, Mordecai and Esther to respond to that in a way to hopefully save God's people. And so anyhow, Haman sent that out, and it caused a lot of dismay in this capital city, of Susa.
And any decree by the king, being how this was the Medes and Persians we're talking about, could not be taken back.
Exactly, yes. And that's something the book sets up with that initial decree with Queen Vashti. It said if she could never come into the king's presence again, and all the women were supposed to be subservient to their husbands. And that went out, and it mentions that any decree of the Medes and Persians, as we saw in Daniel also, can't be changed. So the king can't think, I guess that was a little hasty, and change it. Instead, it has to be followed through with. So anyhow, so that's going to play a big part here later on in a few weeks, once we get to those chapters. But that is the thing of it, and that's why it's so desperate for Mordecai and Esther and all the Jews all over and of course, at that time, the Medes and the Persians controlled all the known world. So it was like from Ethiopia to someplace, India or something.
They had conquered Babylon.
Yeah.
In, what was it, 539, I think.
Yeah.
And in 538, that's when Zerubbabel went back to Jerusalem because of King Cyrus
Yep.
allowing him to go.
Yeah. And this book kind of takes place somewhere in between Ezra and Nehemiah.
Yeah.
It's like they could have went back, but they didn't. So it kind of raises a question about, Esther and Mordecai kind of were outside of God's will for the Jewish people to return back to their land. They were able to, but they didn't. And for whatever reason, they didn't do that.
There were several who did not.
Yeah. Mostly people didn't.
I think maybe close to 50,000 in the first wave that went over.
Yeah.
And actually, Ezra and Nehemiah was one book in the Jewish, what we say Old Testament. That's not what they call it.
Yeah.
And that's why they didn't really want to put Esther in between them, where it really belongs chronologically.
Yeah.
But it's what does it do? Follow Nehemiah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. The last of the history books, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we went kind of over that a little bit too in our study about the canon and that, about how the Jewish scriptures had just a certain amount, but they equate to our 22 books that we have.
Yes.
Or no, 39 we have, I think. Maybe they had 20 something, or based on First and Second Samuel being together, and First and Kings being together, and Chronicles being together, and all that. But anyhow, so yeah, that's the situation they have here. That this Haman has risen to power, and now he has this decree for the destruction of all the Jewish people. And basically, it was on this certain day in the last month that possibly Amy.
The Amalekites, they're descendants of Esau.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who is who was Jacob's brother? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of we looked at that last week, how it basically as soon as they came out of Israel, the Amalekites attacked, and God, kept telling them, it's like, once you get settled in the land, you're going to take care of them. And then King Saul, a Benjamite, ended up kind of failing in that. He was supposed to, but he spared King Agag, even though he got killed by Samuel. But it's interesting that now we have Mordecai, also a Benjamite, is up against the Amalekite that Saul failed to eradicate. So it's an interesting bookend how that works out. Works out only as God can work stuff out.
I didn't realize Mordecai was a Benjamite.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and even mentions that his grandfather was Kish. So it's kind of trying to draw a parallel between Saul, son of Kish, and Mordecai, the grandson of Kish, essentially. So it's a neat book, and also that way, just the structure of it, which we'll see later on about how that there's a term for it, but it basically parallels. It gets to a center point, and then it parallels, and everything kind of reverses backwards until everything's right. But anyhow, cookies and muffins stuff you guys want me. Let's see. From human situation, it looked completely hopeless because they knew it was a decree from the king, so it couldn't be reversed. And so what can you do? Well, tonight we'll see how everything changes. We're going to see how Mordecai and Esther respond to this crisis with grief, courage, and faith. The chapter contains one of the most famous verses in the entire Bible. Maybe. Should be, probably. And it challenges us to consider whether God has placed us in our current situations for such a time as this. So, Esther chapter 4 is a turning point in the story. Maybe not. More of a inciting incident, I guess you could say, or the focal point of it. So far, Esther has been relatively hidden and protected in the palace. Once she became the queen, then she's busy doing queen things and hadn't to worry about the day-to-day stuff that everybody else is. Mordecai has been faithful in a quiet way, but now the crisis forces both of them into action. And the key verse here is Esther 4:14. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this, as we'll see Mordecai say to Esther. And God often places his people in specific situations for a specific purpose. And he calls us to courage and obedience even when the cost is high. So we will see deep mourning and grief, a bold challenge from Mordecai, and Esther's courageous decision to risk everything. So, if someone would like to start reading Esther chapter 4, verses 1 through 7.
When Mordecai had learned all that had been done, Mordecai tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the midst of the city, and he cried out with a loud and bitter cry. He went up to the entrance of the king's gate, for no one was allowed to enter into the king's gate clothed in sackcloth. And in every province, wherever the king's command and his decree reached, there was a great mourning among the Jews, with fasting and weeping and lamenting, and many of them lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Esther's young woman and her eunuchs came and told her, the queen was deeply distressed. She sent garments to clothe Mordecai, so that he might take off his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. And then Esther called for Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, who had been appointed to attend her, and ordered him to go to Mordecai to learn what this was and why it was. Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate, and Mordecai told him all that had happened to him, and the exact sum of money that Haman had promised to pay into the king's treasuries for the destruction of the Jews.
Thank you very much. So we see Mordecai learns of this decree, and apparently he learns a whole bunch about it. All the details that happen. And he tears his clothes, he puts on sackcloth and ashes, and he cries loudly in the city. And we see that's a response of mourning and basically distress. And it said that he wasn't able to come into the king's gate because he's in sackcloth, and that was against the rules. I guess they didn't want anybody making the king sad or being sad in the king's presence there. But when we see the same thing happens all through all the provinces, all through the empire, there is fasting, there's weeping, there's wailing among all the Jews. And see that Mordecai's mourning was intense, but he didn't change his stance or grovel before Haman. Probably wouldn't have made any difference if he had. But his integrity is part of what caused the crisis, and he wasn't going to abandon that now and try to make nice with the Amalekite, Haman, because he was the enemy of God's people. And you can see the seriousness of the threat. All the Jews everywhere in the kingdom. I suppose that would have been the ones in Jerusalem as well. That was still part of the Medes and Persian Empire.
I think there's a great lesson here for us. There in verse 16, Esther's answer to Mordecai says, "Go gather together all the Jews that are pressing in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish." And so whenever we reach a point in our lives where we do not have an answer, and there is no answer in ourselves, one of the best things to do is to fast. And the fast is not to show how good we are so God has mercy on us or whatever, but just to acknowledge that we do not have the answer. We don't have the answer. We're going to have to depend upon God. We're not even going to depend upon food to sustain us, because that's not the answer. it's a physical way of a similarity of a spiritual concept. So spiritually, we do not have the answer either, whatever it might be, you know. And a lot of times we come upon a problem that is serious and we don't know. And you know, even in Esther here, she didn't know the outcome here, but she didn't need to know. Just like we don't need to know. Just trust in the Lord. He's going to work it out one way or the other. And he knows what's best. He's better than we are. He sees more than we do.
Yeah.
That's right.
You think it's a lot like Daniel's 3 friends as well, you know. Maybe we'll die,
Yes,
but we're going to
that's
do
right.
what's right.
They didn't know either.
Yeah.
But they said, we know who we're going to trust in.
Yep. Yeah, very good. Very good. Yeah, and that was something I, of course, I'll get to that a little bit later about the corporate fast that they called, but we see here in fasting and in the Bible, in the Old Testament, fasting, I think, always included basically prayer. It was always calling out to God. It wasn't for anything but calling out to God in that time.
You're all close to God.
Yeah. And like you're saying, like you have no answers. David, when his son with Bathsheba was going to die, you know, he fasted.
Yes, you're right.
And
7 days.
yeah.
Yep.
He wouldn't do anything. He wouldn't eat anything. He didn't, you know, nothing. He just fasted that time, hoping that maybe God would spare the child. And when it was over, then the child died, and he got up and was like, well, I'll clean up and get something to eat and go on my way.
You know, fasting in the New Testament church that I have run into is virtually unheard of. They're at the Effingham Christian Church by the Armory there. That's where I go. They do not meet unless they eat.
Yeah.
It's the eatingest church I've ever been to in my life. And one day I was fasting, and this nurse, Cheryl, this RN, she said, well, do you want some of this here? And I said, no, I'm not eating today. You're not eating? What are you doing? Well, I'm just not eating. Did you eat yesterday? No, I didn't eat yesterday. You got to stop that. Don't do that. As a registered nurse, I'm telling you, this was 3 days, you know. People fasted for 40 days, you know, in the Bible.
But they live to be 132.
Yes, right. It is
Maybe that's
really,
love.
it's a good physical thing to do for you, let alone spiritual.
Yeah.
You should put the emphasis on spiritual, but the physical consequences of fasting are almost miraculous.
Yeah.
Do you see visions? Some
Huh?
people say when they fast they see visions.
I have not. I think that the
blood sugar
Lord,
was low. That's why.
yeah, I think that the Lord has really helped me in a fast. I just broke my fast here just a few minutes ago and gobbled down 2 cookies, but which I usually don't eat carbohydrates. But anyway, nevertheless, my sister-in-law called me, and she was concerned about the law. And you know how Jesus said the law has no authority over us. And she was confused about, you know, do we just break the law then? It doesn't have, you know, and I thought the Lord really helped me in explaining it to her, or trying to, you know, going into Ephesians and Romans, you know, Romans 6. What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. You know, how shall we that are dead to sin live any longer in that sin? And we don't. So he's written it on our hearts so that we might obey it from the heart. Whether the law is there or not, we'll obey it because that's just the way our heart is. It's been changed since Christ. And so the whole thing, I thought the Lord was helping me in trying to explain it to her, you know.
Yeah, fasting is really a discipline that we've, you know, don't do. I think we take Jesus saying, you know, don't let people know you fast, to say, oh, I guess I shouldn't fast then.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that.
We're supposed to brag about it.
No.
Yeah, but we
And the
should do
trouble
it.
It's supposed to be in private.
Every time you don't eat at church, they think something's wrong with you.
Right.
So,
It's a
I
thing.
just tell them I'm not hungry from now on.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. And so, anyhow, Mordecai here is Esther wants him to, she doesn't know what's going on. She sends clothes to him. He won't take them. She sends Hathach maybe to him, one of the king's eunuchs, and he explains the entire thing to him to explain to Esther, because Esther at this point still hasn't told anybody that she was Jewish. So the eunuch, if he knew what the thing was, he wouldn't think anything of it. It's not going to affect the queen at any rate, he would think, at least. But anyhow, so Mordecai is able to spell it out chapter and verse here. And we see that mourning and grief are appropriate response to evil and injustice. And anytime we need to call on God, you're saying, showing that we rely on Him more than our food is a good thing to do.
We wonder sometimes why Esther stayed in Shushan, the palace, with the king. Now the Bible says his name was Ahasuerus.
Yeah.
But some people think that's the same guy as Artaxerxes II.
I don't think Artaxerxes, but Xerxes. I think.
Okay.
I think Artaxerxes might actually be his son.
Yes.
I think that's actually Esther's kid with him, I believe.
Okay. And some people believe that when Nehemiah, in chapter 2 of Nehemiah, when he goes to the king, it's in Shushan the palace, same place where we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And the king says, "Why are you sad?" And he tells him why. But then it mentions in verse 6, and he told the king, in parentheses, the queen being right there, being present. A lot of people think that's Esther.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, but she would have an influence upon the king because he loved her.
Yeah.
And he gave Nehemiah whatever he needed.
Yeah.
And actually down the line, and even in Jerusalem, influenced.
Yeah. That's very interesting. We see that Mordecai's grief didn't lead to despair or compromise. He still trusts God is in control with everything, even when everything looks hopeless. So why do you think that Mordecai chose to mourn so publicly instead of trying to stay hidden or change his position with Haman? I think we know why he didn't change his position with Haman, because he had principles in that. But why do you think he did such a public outcry of grief and sorrow with his mourning?
Maybe for the other Jewish response, maybe? To let all Jews know?
Yeah, maybe. I think they knew.
They'll get together, maybe to come together, maybe?
Yeah.
If you look at the Eastern people, that's the way they do. Even Islam, Muslims do that.
Yeah.
Arabs, they will. When we mourn, we oftentimes do it privately, maybe with a friend or something, Mm-hmm. But at funerals, we cry, but we don't tear our clothes. We don't holler, scream, bewail. We don't wail. Very seldom. I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
But ordinarily not. We're very private with our mourning. And I don't suppose there is any right way to mourn. Everybody mourns in their own way, and I say good for it,
Yeah.
But the Israelites and the Eastern people are very public in their mourning.
Yeah.
And even when Jonah went to Nineveh, the king himself put on sackcloth in the street,
Yeah.
And the people all repented, for over 100 years until they did about like Israel does all the time, go back,
And like we do all the time.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
You think maybe that he was making a statement of his belief?
Yeah, definitely. I think he was showing that, everybody was confused about how come this came about. And he was, I think, like we're saying, it's kind of what they do anyways, but he was wanting everybody to know, hey, this isn't right. He was basically, it's kind of like protesting, like addressing his grievances, just kind of in the only way that he really could, because he didn't have access to the king directly.
Right.
But he could, kind of raise a hue and cry, as it were.
Only when the king asked him. Only time he was there was when king called on him.
Yeah, the king called him, yeah. Yep.
Well, after Haman covering the plot against the king, you think he'd be like, they need to save the king, what's happening?
Yeah.
Why am I going to be killed now?
Yeah, that's the thing of it. Of course, that was, there's time changes in here. We read it like it's all one, it happened like boom, boom, boom. But there was some time jumps
Right.
that we don't realize. At least I never realized before until we got into it.
Now, did Mordecai warn the king of a plot against him?
Yeah.
He had found out about the plot, and he told Esther, and she
Yeah.
passed it on. They investigated and found out that 2 of the eunuchs were plotting to kill the king. And
So he did what he thought was right there,
yeah,
and not knowing that it would have any influence upon his life at all.
Yeah.
But he was determined to do right.
Yeah.
It's the same with us. We don't know when we're insistent on doing the right thing. We don't know whether it'll bear any fruit down the line, but it might.
yeah. And interestingly enough, to Mordecai right now, it looked like that was actually kind of a bad thing. He saved the king, and now the king
now
sent out
he's
this
gonna get
edict to
killed,
kill all
yeah.
the Jews. It's like, what a thank you that was.
Yeah.
But in our fill in the blanks there, number 1, when Mordecai learned of the decree, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and what? And cried out? That's right, ashes. And 2, Mordecai's response of mourning was imitated by Jews across the entire, what empire? Persian Empire, right, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. All right, now let's look at Mordecai's request and challenge. This is in Esther 4, verses 8 through 14. If someone would care to read.
He also gave him a copy of the written decree for their destruction, which was given at Shushan, that he might show it to Esther and explain it to her, and that he might command her to go into the king to make supplications to him that plead before him for the people. So Hathach returned and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Then Esther spoke to Hathach and gave him a command for Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of king's providence shall know that any man or woman who goes into the inner court to the king who has been called, he has put one law, but all to death, except to the one to whom the king holds out the golden scepter, that he may live. Yet I myself have not been called to go into the kingdom for these 30 days. How far did you want me to read?
14, please.
So they told Mordecai Esther's words, and Mordecai told them to answer Esther, do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the Jews.
And 14, please.
For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews, and another place for you and your father's house will perish. Yet you know whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this.
Thank you. Yeah, so Mordecai had all the details. He had paperwork. He had everything prepared to send to Esther so that she would understand what was going on. And her first response is fear, basically saying that, nobody can go before the king unbidden. Quite the opposite of an open door policy. If anybody showed up, he didn't want to see him, they're dead.
I need to take care of Esther. That's what she's saying.
Yeah, somewhat. It's like, and really, you think of the futility of it as well. Like you said, it was his decree, so it couldn't be overturned. It couldn't be changed at this point. So, basically, you could see Esther's in her mind. It's like, well, I'd be risking my life to go to him. He hasn't called me for 30 days. And if I go there, even if he lets me in, what am I going to say? Overturn your law that you can't overturn? Right. There was, it would seem like, again, it seemed like a hopeless situation that there was nothing that she could do. She hadn't been called. Approaching him uninvited could mean death.
You weren't even allowed to be sad in the presence of the king.
Yeah.
That's why Nehemiah was called out. And the king said, "Why is your countenance downfallen?" And Nehemiah gave him the answer, which was kind of risky, because you weren't supposed to be not smiling in the presence of the king.
Yeah. Yeah. The king was under no obligation to try to make you happy. He could just get you gone.
Right.
And not have to think about you anymore. But we see Mordecai's response here. He goes, "Do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise from the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" And that's an interesting thing there to think about, the way that God places us in places, and things that we go through sometimes can be for like preparation for something that comes later on. That we go through a situation and we didn't like it at the time, but afterwards it gives maybe new insight or new understanding, new empathy maybe for somebody who's going through that now. And it's one of the amazing things about the church itself and our local church family is that we come together and we can share each other's griefs and triumphs and everything. And maybe I'm going through something now that Nancy went through 10 years ago, or that maybe Mike will be going through in 2 years from now. That we all can help each other. We all have all these different experiences that help each other out, and God directs us together so that we can lift each other up and help each other. And it's amazing, again, we don't see God mention or Mordecai doesn't say, well, God's going to save us, but that's essentially what he is saying. Help's going to come from somewhere. Where else help's going to come from if not from God? Right. And that's what he was counting on. He knew that help would come, and he's saying that maybe God put you there so that you could be that help that will get us out of this. God's going to use you if you'll let him.
I think sometimes in our doubts and in our fears, that's when we need to hear that strong, words that we don't really want to hear. Like she's like, "You're dead already, pretty much. Based on this decree, you and your house is dead. So what are you going to do with it?" A lot of times when we're like going through a hard time, it's like we don't need like, "Oh, poor you," But hey, shape up. So.
Yeah. I mean, you think about
tough love, yeah.
You think
Tough love.
You think about Joshua before they went into the promised land. He's taken over for Moses. All these times. Be courageous. Don't fear. And that's what we need sometimes, is to understand. And that's, again, part about reading our Bible. We can see, like in the Psalms and that, how many times they'll tell you about, where's your help come from? It comes from the Lord. Look to God for help. He's your refuge and your strength. He's your shield, your tower, and all this. It's over and over again, like all through. We see how we're supposed to rely on God, and yet often when we get any kind of problem, the first thing we do is start trying to figure out how we're going to solve it. We don't turn to God. We don't do like Mordecai did, fast and turn to God and rely fully on him. We start trying to plot and scheme and figure out how we can do things on our own power, which never works out. And that's the thing. Mordecai's confidence isn't in Esther, it's in God. He knows deliverance will come from another place. If not through Esther, God will use someone else to bring his will about. So God's plans do not depend on any single person, but he often chooses to work through people who are willing to step out in faith at the right moment. And of course we see that all through the Bible. People saying, "Here I am, send me," and then God will take them and use them in a way that is really powerful. But it's always about being willing, not even necessarily being able. Because, again, Esther wasn't able just to go in and talk to the king without possibly being put to death. She had no ability to override what the king's law was. But because she was willing, not to get ahead of the story here, but we'll see how God is able to use that.
even the reluctant ones that are reluctant at first anyway, the Lord can use.
Yeah.
For instance, Jonah. Yeah. Jonah, and who else was reluctant? Gideon.
Yeah.
Reluctant.
Jeremiah sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and in a lot of ways, I think, it's probably shows that you're really in God's will when you're doing stuff, even if you don't want to do it. If you're doing something you want to do, that's something you want to do.
Yeah.
It's not as powerful as a witness as whenever you're, like Elijah, like despair, and yet going and doing it anyways.
Yeah. The truth and right will go a long ways.
Yeah.
Even when we don't see what the outcome's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's faith, right? The confidence in things unseen. Not knowing what's going to happen, but just trusting that whatever does happen, that God's going to be there with you.
Daniel was not sure what the outcome was going to be when his faith was tested.
Yeah.
But through the years, he took a man, Nebuchadnezzar, who gouged the eyes out of Zedekiah, King Zedekiah.
Yeah.
Right after he killed his two sons right in front of him. The last thing he ever saw before and then Nebuchadnezzar didn't kill him. He just gouged his eyes out and took him back to Babylon and made him live and remember these things,
Yeah.
That was a wicked man. And yet when Daniel got done with him, it was almost, he praises the God of Israel who rules puts kings up and sets kings down.
Yeah.
And I think it's chapter 4 of Nehemiah.
Yeah.
It's actually written in Aryan, in Syriac.
Yeah. It's
And
written
it
by
almost sounds
Nebuchadnezzar.
like Nebuchadnezzar is doing the
Yeah.
chapter,
Yeah.
So he says, he said, this Lord, and he says how he made him to eat grass like an ox and whatever,
Yeah.
But he raised him back up. And he had nothing but praise for that God. And Daniel was the influence, and the three Hebrew children,
Yeah.
Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. And you think about Daniel in that spot, a lot worse off than Esther. He wasn't, but he was basically taken to be a slave in the court, just to be like a guy to go to for answers. And yet, because he stayed and faithful to God, he was able to influence, the king of the most
Yes.
powerful, Gentile, of the greatest Gentile
When
kingdom.
the king went out to the lion's den, he says, "Oh, Daniel, was the Lord able to save you?"
Yeah.
And when he hears Daniel's voice, he is happy. And he's the one who put him there,
Yeah, well, once again, the
Kind of tricked him
Because it
in a
couldn't
way.
be
but-
changed.
of all the Medes and the Persians.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So let's look at our fill in the blanks here. Number 3, Mordecai sent Esther a copy of the decree and urged you to go before the king to make what to him? Supplication. Plead for her people. Number 4, Esther explained that anyone who approached the king without being called faced the law of being put to what? Death. And number 5, Mordecai told Esther that even if she remained silent, relief and deliverance for the Jews would arise from where? Another place. And number 6, Mordecai challenged Esther with the question of whether she had come to the kingdom for such a what as this?
Time.
Such a time as this.
Tells her, don't forget, you're a Jew too.
Yeah. Yeah. She wouldn't be the first queen that got deposed
No.
under
She's got a record
Ahasuerus.
there.
Yeah. So let's look now at the last few verses here. Esther 4:15 through 17.
Then Esther bade them, returned Malachi this answer: Go gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat or drink 3 days, night or day. And I also, my maidens, will fast likewise, and so will I go unto the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish. So Malachi went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him.
Thank you. And yeah, that's
She commanded him. I thought that was a big word to use. This is, you do this.
Well, yeah, she's like, I'll do what you tell me to do, but you got to do what I tell you to do. And again, it shows that she understood that it wasn't, that she wasn't going to be able to go in there and just bat her eyes, and the king's like, oh, okay, well, come on in. That she needed God's help. This all had to be from God in order for it to work. And so she...
Yeah, she's saying, if I do this for you, you got to do this for me.
Well, it's more like, if you got to do this for me so that I can do this for you, we need to call on God all together, corporately, to call on Him. That's why, like, the little thing that Ron does at Strong Towers, the One Body, One Prayer, where everybody prays over one thing, like for the whole week. And that's kind of the same thing here that Esther's telling Mordecai to do. So you guys all go, and you know that I'm going to go to the king, and I'm going to try to plead for us, but it could mean my head if I do. So we all got to fast, and incumbent in that is reaching out for God, to God, to have Him intercede, because He's the only one who can. So she commits to 3 days of fasting and prayer with the Jewish community in Susa. Then decrees she will approach the king even if it cost her life. And again, reminds us of the 3 Hebrew children, O king, live forever, but we're not going to bow. And if we die, we die, but we think God will see us through. But if He doesn't, that's okay. And that's kind of what
Shushan, another name for Susa, is a city that's actually still going on. It's a city of Shush, like Shush. S-H-U-S-H.
Wow.
Yeah, it's you can find it on a map. It's, in Babylon, Iran, I think, probably. Yeah. Not Iran, Iraq. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. We see here that Esther doesn't act impulsively. She wants everybody to pray and fast. Fasting included prayer, essentially, calling out to God, recognizing this was a spiritual battle that requires spiritual preparation. And her famous words there, if I perish, I perish, shows total surrender to God's will. She is willing to obey even if the outcome is death. And this attitude mirrors the heart of Jesus, or the heart Jesus calls His followers to have. Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. So just physical death really doesn't matter. But what matters is whether or not you're faithful to God or not. If you put your trust in Jesus. Courage often looks like obedience combined with dependence on God through prayer. Esther does not rush in with her own strength. She first seeks God's strength. And again, to Mordecai's point, you think of all the things that's happened from the beginning of the book of Esther to this point has all led to get her to that position so that she can go and do this. If Queen Vashti hadn't been deposed, then there wouldn't have been a beauty contest. If she had won a beauty contest, she wouldn't be there. All these things had to happen for this to be possible. And even not to get ahead of the story, but even the fact that God had said that the Amalekites would be wiped out, and then now it's going to happen.
God's plan.
At the end of this book, God's plan is going to be enacted. Number 7 on our fill in the blank. Before going to the king, Esther called the Jews in Shushan to fast with her for how many days? 3 days. 3 days, night and day. Number 8, Esther expressed her determination and surrender by saying she would go to the king anyway, and declared, if I what? I perish? If I perish, I perish. That's correct. So we'll see Esther's willingness to risk her life for her people is beautiful, but it ultimately points us to someone greater. Jesus didn't just risk His life, He actually gave His life willingly for His people. He said, greater love hath no man than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. In John 15:13. Esther's words, if I perish, echo the heart of surrender we see in Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Not my will, but yours be done. And where Esther acted in faith for a temporary deliverance, Jesus secured eternal deliverance for all who trust in Him. Let's see, number 9 there in the Gospel Connection. Esther's willingness to risk her life for her people points toward Jesus, who gave his life rather than merely what? Rather than merely just risk it. And Esther's attitude of surrender, this is number 10, is compared to Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he prayed, not my will, but whose be done?
Yours.
Yours. God's will be done. So we can see in this that God places us strategically. For such a time as this applies to us too. God has put you in your family, your job, your neighborhood, in your church, in your friend group, all that for a time such as this. You never know, who you can reach. But I have to say, all of us have people that we can reach in our own circle that nobody else here would even ever meet any day of the week. And so we all have people like that we're the only people maybe out of this group who could influence them. And so, courage often requires preparation. Esther fasted and prayed before acting. Big steps of faith are usually preceded by time with God. And of course, that can be time in the Word, knowing what the Word is, so you can talk to somebody about it. Praying, so you're close to God. And fasting, so you can show dependence on God. All these things are important for us to do. And again, it should be, I think, maybe more of a regular thing than we make it. Especially fasting. Like you said, sometimes we might have it's like, we're all going to fast this week, or we're going to do something. But Van did that once. He called it a solemn assembly. So we're all going to fast on this certain Sunday. But it's probably something we should do regularly, just to show God that we can give up something for Him, not in a
With my
Lenten
fast,
way.
I think about food all the time, so it don't do no good. If you're not concentrating on God when you do it, and you're concentrating on food, it doesn't do any good.
That's probably why a 3-day fast is really good, because at a certain point, your energy actually goes up.
After 3 days, you're not even hungry anymore.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, you can go for 2 weeks and not be hungry, but the first 3 days you probably will be.
I've only done it for 24 hours, twice, maybe 3, because the church,
Yeah.
done it.
But it's an important thing to even in the discomfort to say, okay, I'm going to do this, and just keep training your mind to go towards God and
But
say,
if you do it so often, would it be routine? It wouldn't be special for God if you do it all the time? Like the Lord's Supper?
You
if you
probably
do it.
won't be tempted to do it too often.
Well, I know I wouldn't, but how about you?
yeah, I think that,
But you're right about we got to have the right
Attitude.
reason
yeah,
for fasting.
yeah,
It's to draw close to God, to acknowledge to God that in our situation here, we're helpless. We need you to help us.
yeah. The Pharisees, they fasted like certain days of the week they would fast, and as you can see that they had priorities mixed up and they weren't in God's will. So it's not just the act of doing it by itself. And of course, Jesus kind of called them out. They did it, and they made themselves look really haggard and put on their tattered clothes. Everybody knew, oh, look at him, he's fasting. What a pious guy. But they were doing it just for that reward. They weren't doing it to get close to God. So doing things with the right reason, the right heart attitude is as important as doing it. Because otherwise you're just making a show of it.
It's
And
just
not.
like the Lord's Supper, you got to.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're just on a diet.
I'm sorry?
So otherwise, you're just on a diet.
Exactly, yeah.
It's
And there's,
not
like I said, there's health benefits for it, but we don't do it for that. That
Right.
The
shouldn't
diet is usually for us.
be. Yeah,
The fast is not.
yeah,
Yeah.
And
I
then
guess
fasting,
in a
sometimes you
roundabout.
can still drink water and still fast, right?
yeah,
Almost everybody drinks water during a fast.
Okay.
yeah.
Because you can go, 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, at least 3 weeks without food.
Yeah,
No problem in 3 weeks. Now, if you're type 1 diabetic, you shouldn't be fasting, So use your head on the whole thing. I have a question. What could a 10-year-old girl learn from this lesson today?
well, I think, one, just to trust God, to know that He's going to lead you if you let him, he'll lead you to the right spot, the right place to be.
And plus, you're on this earth for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of problems a 10-year-old girl would have in the world today. I used to teach school.
Yeah.
I know what went on back in the 70s, but I've talked to my granddaughters, and they say there is oftentimes a good deal of cliquishness and bullying in school.
Yeah.
And so that could potentially be a place where a youngster could stand for what is right. Now, it may not be without consequence, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the kind of the whole thing here with Esther, is the fact that she was obedient despite what the consequence could have been. She was willing to face that consequence, and it's a shame that I think that probably the stuff that was like high school problems back in the day, like when I was in school, are probably now more close to getting lower and lower in grades all the time, and so that 10-year-olds and that probably faced some of the stuff that high schoolers used to have to worry about.
If a 10-year-old girl stood up to a bully, she's liable to get hurt. Mm-hmm.
Potentially.
But whenever they're standing for right, and if they can reason from the scriptures and try to, I don't know, maybe you can't reason with a bully, I don't know, but say what you're doing is not right and you shouldn't be doing it. Not necessarily go rat them out, but just try and correct them. They may get a sore jaw out of it or a bloody nose. I don't know how they do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think sometimes just standing up sometimes and just being the voice that says, hey, that's not right. That makes a difference.
Because, just like, do you remember when King David took his sling and 5 stones and killed Goliath?
Yeah.
That whole Israelite army was scared to death. What happened after he showed courage? When he turned around with that Goliath's head in his hand, he was almost run over by the entire Israelite army, going after the Philistines and chasing them from one hill to the other.
Yeah, for 40 days they've been cowering.
So courage is contagious.
Yeah.
Another thing that's contagious is cowardice.
Yeah.
That's why for years in our American army, generals and leaders would shoot to kill deserters because it would become so contagious that the whole field would flee and many men would be massacred.
Yeah.
But they stopped that cowardice immediately. And it's kind of a harsh thing, but in the long run, it saved many lives, or it could have, and did probably.
Yeah.
So cowardice is contagious as well as courage.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, think about this, I guess. Where has God placed you right now that might be for such a time as this? And what step of obedience or courage might He be asking of you? And does anybody have any other questions or anything before we dismiss? We're up against it all the time.
One thing the Lord says, if you love me, obey me.
Yeah.
Keep my commandments.
Keep my commandments.
And so we have to stand up. We can't let the name of the Lord be run roughshod over.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I think we put up with people taking the Lord's name in vain. And we don't have to make a big deal of it, but just going up to the person. You say, the Lord Himself said that He would not hold a man guiltless who takes His name in vain. And you don't want to be that person. It may not make any difference, but it might.
Pastor Ben is doing that. He would pick up the cars for dealers.
Yeah.
And he said he was in with some guys and somebody let a cuss word. And he said, he's a preacher. And he said, well, go ahead. He said, don't bother me, but it bothers God.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing about David as well with Goliath. For 40 days, Goliath kept coming out and was insulting Israel and insulting God. But it's so cool in the verse it says, but David heard that time. And then David wasn't going to have it. So yeah, we need to be Like Esther, like
And he
David.
had opposition too. Even his own brother said, "What in the
Yeah.
world are you doing here? Get back to the sheep."
One
Yeah.
time I even asked somebody when they used the God's name in vain, I said, I thought you didn't believe in God. Why are you using his name?
I'm an atheist, so help me God.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you all very much. If nothing else, let's be dismissed in prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you again for your word. We thank you for this study we've had tonight, and for the conversations that we've had and the fellowship that we've had. Help us, Father, to take the lessons in your word to heart, and to be bold and to stand up for you, and to allow you to use us where you've placed us, because you've put us here for a reason, and you've led us through our individual life paths for a reason, so that we can witness to certain people, and we know certain people that we can talk to that others can't. Father, help us just to be faithful to your calling that you put on us, and be with us, be with those on our prayer list. So we ask this all in Jesus' name. Amen.